shorties. So I got inspiration for this video because of an assignment that I had to do a few months ago on a cultural campaign. It was a quick little one to give a couple of details, the brand, the culture they're trying to target, whether they're successful, period. But the campaign that I chose, I was actually turned out to be really passionate about. And so I didn't have enough time to do it justice. So here I am, spinning the black, trying to talk about Bottega Veneta, specifically their Lunar New Year campaign, which we'll touch on. But I feel like the elements in that kind of grasp the scope of why we are so entrenched in the idea of Bottega Veneta. We, me, it's me. I am so intrigued by them and their marketing strategy. So we're going to dive into that. So you may know, Bottega is a brand that actually erased their Instagram as well as their YouTube presence in North America. In North America is important because they're still very present in China on Weibo, WeChat, and Little Red Book, but we'll spin the block on that later. So with that, it's booty cheeks for the US because, of course, we want access to that information. Who doesn't want access to literally all the information ever? But in your mind, if you're like, ooh, they're erasing stuff, ooh, they're downsizing, ooh, getting rid of your presence typically means the worst is to come. No. Controversially, compared to Kering's other brands, Bottega has been doing better and not worse, and the US still makes up just shy of 20% of their annual revenue by the region. So, big question, and I do have we have a computer today because I have a lot of notes. Big question, big video question. Why eliminate the touch point? What is there to gain? And is this a strategy other brands should be looking into? And also we'll touch on, is it authentic? Does it feel right with our spirit? Amen. I'm not religious, I'm so sorry. But before we can dig into that, let's talk about the inception. Conception, immaculate conception. Shut up. Bottega Veneta was founded in Vincenzo, Italy by Renzo Zingario and Michele Tadai. Butchered those. Sorry. In 1966. About to butcher something else. As they're defined by their leather goods, they're identified by their signature, wait for it, intrecciato weave. You're going to see that in small, large, all leather goods, clean lines, fairly intricate, elegant, elevated. It is gorgeous to look at. The craftsman, chef's kiss. But while the brand changed hands a multitude of times between their inception in 66 to getting acquired by Kering Group, then Gucci Group, I think, in 2001, 1997 was actually the first year that they had a creative director, TM. You know what I mean? And that was Edward Buchanan. Shout out Black creators. He was the first one in 1997. And since then, it was Buchanan to Thomas Mayer, who was the creative director for 17 years. So we can attribute much of what Bottega is today to him. Like he for real was the man with the vision type shit. I don't know if I can say type shit on here. Then we have Daniel Lee, Matthew Blasi, and now we're in Louise Trotter era. But because Blasi is the one that wiped the Instagram, we are going to be focusing primarily on his tenure and his view of the brand because he did that. So that kind of leads us into a conversation of how we as a society view creative directors today. Before, my idea of what the creative director was prior to like 2010, maybe even sooner, was, hi, I'm here to creatively direct. I'm here for the clothes and for the vision of some of the vision of the brand, but primarily I'm pushing these clothes out every season. Point blank period. And you would too for a check.
And you would do it too for a check. I was an employee.
And that was much of their scope. There wasn't this whole like walk out at the end of the runway. There wasn't the focus on who's doing what next, who's at the thing. It really was just make the clothes. Just run the routes. You know what I mean? And now it very much is, we see the creative director as an extension of the brand. And I think we kind of like it that way, at least for now, is we want it to feel, I this word, we're going to use this word all the time. Cohesive. We want it to feel cohesive. We want it to make sense. Make it make sense. We want your personality, your being, your essence, your aesthetic, your direction to either align with the brand as it is already or show us a direction in which it can be potentially elevated. If we're not seeing the vision, then that usually doesn't bode well for the brand. Just because we are so focused on that figurehead of who is the creative director. And that's just where we're at right now. And so Blasey is one of a few in the cohort that have decided to wipe a social media clean with the beginning of their tenure. This could potentially be to eliminate any sort of overlap, be like, that's where they end, this is where I start, because there can be that kind of like, who did what with who. So popular. And that could be to eliminate that, or it could very well be just a media ploy. Or, as we'll see here, Blasey, again, doesn't have social media. So maybe in this, he's like, why would I have Bottega if I'm Bottega, Bottega is me. If I am so entrenched in the identity of Bottega and we are aligned so much, why would I not have social media? And then the brand have social media. Doesn't that feel inauthentic? Potentially. Because he said in a quote, I'm aware of social media. I like it in some respects. I don't in others. And to the New York Times, he said, I don't know what I would put on there that would be interesting, which I think is so fascinating because I'm always like, I've recently started accepting the fact that I really do just have a lot to say. I really just can't shut up. Whereas before, people would ask me for advice on stuff. People would ask me, ooh, what do you, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't have anything to say. But I don't think that's true. But social media in itself is its own beast. So I don't blame him for not having a social media. You know what I mean? Here I am talking to y'all in the camera. Anyway, so yeah, the role of the creative director is permanently shifting and molding into new things, and it's whatever anyone wants it to be at this point. Because there is really just so much flexibility. It's such an overarching term for what you could be. And so maybe it was a strategy, or maybe it was, I don't want to, I'm tired of this grandpa.
That's too damn bad!
You know what I mean? And who can blame them? So creative directors are more than just ideators for the clothes and the vision. They really are the brand. So where does the brand stop and the brand start? That varies between brands. That varies between brands and the iconicism of the tenure for that person. Like, for example, if people think Karl Lagerfeld, Chanel, Karl Lagerfeld, that, like, am I his biggest fan? No. But he really did that for Chanel, and we got to give him his ones and twos. Anyway, as far as whether it's for cohesion or whether it's for strategy, the numbers are not gonna lie. So looking at the list index from creating buzz and looking at a couple of statistics from Bottega, between 2021 and 2024, that's what it is. Bottega jumped from 10 to 6 on the list hotness index for Q4. And in 2025, sales from North America rose 19% and 17% in Western Europe, despite Kering's 14% dip in revenue. So despite some of Kering's other brands not doing as well, Bottega, who have eliminated their North American presence outside of bought and earned media, is still it's still popping off. Like, they're still popping off. And why is that? I feel like to get into why that is, we're gonna have to talk about not only revenue, we're gonna have to talk about Bottega and how they send their message versus how they are received, as well as the era of quiet luxury, which we're all sick of talking about. But I think that part of the reason that this works so well, not building on top that Blasey himself does not have social media, is that in 2021, 2024, quiet luxury was all we could talk about. And to an extent, no, I feel like now we're moving into everything's maximal, but I don't think we all know what maximal means. Get into it. But everyone's talking about quiet luxury. Everybody wants to, we're moving away from logomania. And if you know, you know, and I know this, you know? And so the timing of it, I think, was beautiful, where we're in this era of quiet luxury. You already don't have a social media. What's the quietest version of quiet luxury? Elimination. Like, disappearing. Disappearing from existence. That's quiet. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like the timing of that also kind of builds, and the fact that they're already quiet, they're already an ultra luxury brand, is just kind of like, okay, yeah, okay, mystery gang, Scooby Dooby Doo. But yeah, it feels to me, if a brand, this is a media strategy. Don't get me wrong, it's all media strategy, mama. It's all media strategy. But I think that this one does feel seamless and authentic because of these different factors. And obviously, scoreboard, numbers, like it's working. It's whatever. And so, like we said, they're not present in North America, but they are available on Weibo. Again, take me out back. I'm pronouncing these wrong. WeChat and Little Red Book, which are primarily used in China, the Asia Pacific region. And so we're going to circle back to that. But first, we have to talk about perception and the consumer. Business of Fashion, the BOF, is who's bridging the gap best with their brand magic index. This is something fairly new that they rolled out, I think, sometime last year, where they use archetypes for the personality of how the brands see themselves and how they're projecting themselves into the ether versus how the consumer is kind of receiving that energy. And this gives us an idea of where there may be gaps in understanding of what the brand's trying to say versus what the consumer is hearing, and how they can adjust their message to kind of cater to some of those archetypes or to that consumer. So we're just going to look at Bottega's big three. The big three. So the different sections are the sender, the receiver, and both. Pretty self-explanatory. So for the first one in the big three is the caregiver, which is shown through their campaigns with ASAP Rocky, and they have a couple Parent Day ads. And so they show themselves as exclusive but very family oriented. But you'll see with the lack of overlap, as consumers, we're not necessarily receiving that. I feel like I definitely get that vibe, but this feels kind of like not new, but more brought to the forefront kind of initiative that I think just needs a little bit more stacking before the consumer can really be like, oh, okay, brr, I see that. Pinches of approval. Next is the participant, which to me, it sounded contradictory. Because Bottega is an ultra luxury brand. They're seen as leaders. They are so deeply rooted in their heritage. Like, they start, y'all follow type beat. But this definition of participant really is more about community building and being down to earth rather than trend and product focused, which is Bottega to a T. So I'll give them that. And you'll see that in all of their ads across the board. And their viewership seems to agree. And last is the creator, which they definitely put out the vibe less, but it's seen and felt in their receivers, which I think is big. So it means that they're creating meaning and enduring value created through the different touch points of their brand. So not only the high quality, but also the meaning of, for example, a video essay, pretty much, yeah. The video we're about to get into for the campaign, as well as our most recent one, you'll see that it's not just about the product. It is, I think, the least about the product. Like, it's so much more about everything else before the product, and that creates value for the consumer and being like, I'm a part of something. So in that, I feel like they're both leader and participant for their consumer. So those are the big three, and that's kind of how they are sending out and receiving their information, and that gives us a little bit more insight into who this consumer is and why maybe these tactics kind of work on them. But let's get into the video. Guess who's finally getting to the point? Now that we have all of this background information about Bottega and creative direction and how they're perceived, let's get into the video and discuss some of the elements that make it so successful and beautiful and why I love it so much. So, the video. Again, my presentation was on 2025 Lunar New Year campaign. Because honestly, I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, beautifully shot. It's nostalgic, it's warm, it's stunning. But I think that it gets that much more like, oh, y'all love research too, once you start digging into it. So first, location. This was shot in Luoyang, China, which is the birthplace of fireworks. New Year fireworks, period. That one, not much of a reach, but I didn't know that this was the birthplace of fireworks. In 2 BC, a version of fireworks were used to ward off evil spirits. Okay, but around, I think, 600 AD, we got a more updated version of what we see more frequently now of what fireworks are used for celebration. And Luyang has an annual festival for fireworks every year around the New Year, which I think is so cool. And then as I was looking at this, I'm like, this looks really familiar. I also love movies. So I've seen In the Mood for Love maybe 6 times. And so the videographer for this campaign was Wing Xia. I am so sorry I butchered her name. Wing Xia is a famous videographer from Hong Kong, and he's worked on a multitude of different editorials and campaigns. But most notably for me, he worked with Wong Kar-wai in the Mood for Love. And so the color palette, as well as the warmth, was very not only nostalgic, but it was very reminiscent of the movie. And here's a couple of stills from the movie. And I think that this emphasizes the idea that it's so important to have people in the room for these campaigns, and for honestly every campaign, for every aspect of like a team. If you have a team and you're trying to reach people, you need to have different levels of representation in order to reach that target, because it adds a level of personality, or it adds a level of nuance. And for the people like me that are going to dig into this, it's like, wow, I see myself in this. I see myself represented in a way that is so beautiful and so meaningful. And we need people like this in the room, period. Diversity matters. And then as far as symbols, of course, the year of the snake, as well as the staple knot, which we have for the bracelet. We'll see on the bags, emphasizing that sort of connectedness and togetherness for the new year. I just think that this was all shot, and the accumulation of all the details makes it such a beautiful and holistic campaign. But I think what makes it so Bottega and so, like, I guess all the more heartwarming is the way that the products are shot, actually, because they're really not. You're going to see people walking around. You're going to see people at a dinner party, walking on the street, enjoying time with their friends, meeting up with family, and they'll have a bag, but that's not the primary focus. Or they'll have the bracelet, and maybe we'll get a quick zoom in. We'll get a quick one too, but it really is just like you're holding the bag. The bag is an accessory. It just happens to be there. It is an accessory to the connection, the tangible connection that you have with people around you. And for me personally, for films and campaigns and anything that is shot in such a way that we are getting multiple stories at once, where we're all kind of showing the minuscule like roles that we play in each other's lives, where it's like you walk by one person and they're going about living out the rest of their life, and it's just like a seamless handoff of maybe we acknowledge each other, maybe we don't, and then we're following this new group, or we're following this new person that has their own life going on. I think that always, I don't know, I like how small it makes the world seem, and I think that they really captured that in this campaign, which I think was really beautiful. For this campaign, as well as their Hands to Craftsmanship, which is their most recent campaign based on a book on Italian hand gestures, which I had no idea about. And I think that is the crux of like what is so enticing about Bottega, is that it always feels like there's something more to be learned with them. Not every brand is here offering you education, and education in a way that it is adding to the brand. I feel like Hermes is a brand that does this really well, but Bottega really takes you on this journey, takes you through this campaign where you're seeing all the stuff, and it is shot beautifully. But then you're like, where did all of this come from? How did we get from point A to point B? Because on the surface, hands and gestures and craftsmanship. Okay, I could have told you that. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I and a few people probably in my cohort probably could have come up with a very similar idea. But the fact that it is not just, okay, hands, okay, craftsmanship, okay, the hands are making the blah, 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 blah. It's more than that. It's gesture. It is how we connect with others. It's as you see me over here doing everything except getting to the point, my hands are moving the entire time. And that's why connecting that to it, I didn't know there was a book on Italian hand gestures and how those gestures are to be interpreted in, that sounded wrong, through conversations. And it's like, now that's something else that I can go and research. But I think there's always something deeper historical meaning and deeper connection to the brand, to the people, to the culture that Bottega executes very well. So let's talk numbers. Why China? You know what I mean? If you're not in the fashion scape, you're probably asking why China. If you are, you already know. You already know. Yeah. So it's China because the Chinese market is booming, brother. The Chinese market is beating us out our draws. They're beating the pants off of us in North America as far as luxury buying and like producing revenue. You know what I mean? So the general luxury US, I'm speaking, that was my Substack. The general luxury US customer does not have the same needs, desires, and shopping mentality as the general Chinese consumer. Point blank, period. We have different methodologies. We have different ways that we shop. And this, again, is a very generalized view. So if you're like, well, I don't do that. Sorry, Buki. I wasn't speaking to you. You got to stand up or something. But we in the US are less likely to make pricey purchases via social media and online. Despite our move to online, we'll get inspiration from places like Pinterest or Cosmos, and we'll online shop and do all the stuff. But when it comes to a luxury purchase, we're going in person, touch, feel, hit all the main points, get the service that American people deserve. Gross, dude. And then we might purchase. But from what I've heard, oh my God, when I learned about these apps, going to SCAD and talking to some of our favorite exchange students, y'all can buy anything off these apps. So Weibo, again, guys, if I'm pronouncing this wrong, take me out back. Weibo, WeChat, and Little Red Book, they're apps that target slightly different age groups, and were all founded in this kind of boom in the 2010s of like app creation. And in terms of revenue for Bottega, the Asia Pacific makes up 30%. No, they're not going to get rid of their presence on media out there, because on Weibo, WeChat, and all the y'all can buy a house. Y'all can buy stuff on there. And granted, we have like, because these are all variations of very similar ideas of like Instagram, TikTok, blah, blah. Not to that extent, mama. Not to that extent. I didn't know when I saw the page. One of my friends told me you can buy anything on here. You don't need to carry around these cards. You have the apps. Crazy business. And I'm sure there's plenty of Chinese consumers that are like, I need to go touch, feel, do all the stuff. I'm a consumer, gosh darn it. And I'm going to go into the store and get the experience. Period. I love an in-store experience. Everyone go into the stores. Stop buying stuff online only. But I feel like that potentially makes them more adept to buying things like that online, buying more expensive things online, buying things through social media. Because for me personally, TikTok Shop feels like the black web. I don't go on there. If I accidentally scroll onto TikTok Shop, get me out of there. I'm shutting down the app. I don't know what it is. It feels like I got a virus on my phone. So I'm not going to be making purchases on there. Even if luxury brands are like, buy it. No. Even on Instagram. But no. I'm going to, anything more, granted, I don't have a lot of money right now. I'm unemployed. But if it came down to buying anything over $50, I'm going in person. I'm going in person. You can't stop me. So going back to revenue, mind you, as I'm looking at my computer, going back to revenue, yeah, Asia Pacific makes up 30% alone. North America still at 19%. So for this reason, rightfully so, Bottega directed their eyes more towards the more profitable market. They have 119 stores in Asia Pacific compared to 55 in the US. And that's because, frankly, I don't feel like the US, we ain't really got the shits right now as far as like enthusiasm for luxury. That's going to be another video. That's going to be something else I talk about. But what I have kind of found in this dive into Bottega and how they are perceived and how they wish to be perceived, what markets they're talking to, things like that, is that in North America, while we have a tendency for wanting immediate gratification for a lot of us, we do also kind of love the chase. We do kind of love the chase. So we love the if you know, you know. We really do, despite the lack of gatekeeping that we've seen across media so far. As a concept, when executed correctly, we love the if you know, you know. We love being able to say that we jumped in on something before anybody else did, that we know about this little detail that you don't know. We love it. I feed off of it. I feed. And so that makes this whole video where I'm like, why are we so obsessed with Bottega? We is me. That was the big reveal. That was the big thing. We is me. We're talking about what I want to talk about. No one else cares about this. The solar image, or lack thereof, is enticing, and it's the mystery of the market. They continue their buzzworthy growth by gearing themselves towards the Asia Pacific market. They don't have a media here because they don't have to. That's the crux of the video. They don't have a social media in North America because they literally don't have to, based on revenue, based on their identity, based on their own research and who they're trying to talk to right now. They literally don't have to. Gag it. They don't have to. So I guess I can ask you guys questions. How do you feel about their lack of presence in the US? Like, do you feel left out? Are you feeling kind of like a bald-headed stepchild, redheaded stepchild, whatever it is? Do you feel a type of way about it? Like, on some entitled American shit, do you feel a type of way about it? Is social media for luxury brands kind of redundant? Is it clout chasey? And what are your favorite campaigns? If you have a favorite campaign, what are some campaigns that you think align with the brand really well and are also executed really well? Similar to how I feel very passionately about the Lunar New Year 2025 campaign. What are some campaigns that you're like, ooh, hashtag need that? Ew, I hated that. But for real, like what excites you? What brand, what campaign, what angle excites you? But yeah, me personally, social media for luxury brands can feel a bit clout chasey. Ooh. Ooh. But yeah, let me know. Comment below. I don't know what my next video is going to be, but stay tuned.